So I didn't really do the like spooky books thing in October. I just read a lot. I read 11 books, which I don't think I've ever done. I don't think I've ever read 11 books in a month. The first book that I finished reading in October is Negotiating with the Dead by Margaret Atwood. This I would give probably 2 out of 5 stars, but not because it was bad necessarily. I was expecting much more of a book about like her approach to writing and her writing style, and this is really more of a philosophical discussion about like writers and poets and their place in society and how society treats them. I did find out that she was a poet originally in Canada, which I didn't know, and it is really interesting, but it's really stream of consciousness, which can get really hard for me to follow, especially if I'm reading when I'm tired, like right before bed. But this is one that I had issues with due to memory loss. I'll link my video in a card or something about reading with memory loss. This is one of the books that I had a really hard time with. But I was really happy to be able to finish it. It was a really interesting read, but it just wasn't really what I was expecting or what I was really looking for. Okay, the second book that I finished this month was The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. This book is so good. I'll give this a 5 out of 5 stars. I'm gonna reread, like you can see, I tabbed it. I started tabbing here, like that's when I figured out how I wanted to tab stuff and keep track of it. I'm planning on going back through this and tabbing the first like 2/3 of the book. This is about Zachary Ezra Rollins, who is in graduate school for video game design. He's super into stories and how we tell them and how we interact with them, which is, I found that really cool. And he finds a book in his library, his university's library, that is all short stories, and one of the short stories is about him and something that he experienced when he was about 11 years old. He gets really obsessed with the book and all of these stories, and are the rest of the stories real things, because they seem really fantastical. And he ends up in this world of the Starless Sea and this magical library, not magical library, but close enough. It bounces around a lot between perspectives, which was really fun, and I love Erin Morgenstern's writing. I read The Night Circus a while back. I love The Night Circus. I was super excited to get to read this. I'm planning on rereading The Night Circus probably sometime after December. And it's all of her writing is just like pure prose poetry. And I love it. 5 out of 5 stars. I'm going to recommend this to literally everyone. All right, the next book that I finished, Children of Blood and Bone by Tommy Adeyemi. This is another book that I had trouble with initially. I think this time around was my 3rd time reading the beginning part because I kept stopping because I couldn't keep track of different perspectives and all of that stuff. This is an excellent book. We follow 3 main characters, Zelly, Inan, and Amara. The magic in this world has been taken away, it's disappeared, and the magi, the people who are able to use magic, are being persecuted. Now, Zelly would be a magi if there were magic in the world, and her mother was a magi, and she has seen some terrible things in their persecution. Zelly goes on this quest to return magic to the world, and there are some amazing character arcs in here, oh my god. I will say that the middle of this felt like it kind of dragged for me, like we just got kind of sidetracked from certain things that I felt really would have moved the plot forward a bit more. But overall, it's a really great book. I cried very, very hard at the end, and I kept rereading the last 10 pages and the last, 20 pages repeatedly while trying to prove to myself that there was more book, but there wasn't. So, 4 out of 5 stars, really enjoyed it, highly recommend it. There is another book in the series called Children of Vengeance and Virtue and Vengeance, one of those 2. I'm planning on reading that soon, and I am super excited about that because the ending of this one is really good. The next 2 books that I read these on Kindle, so I'm just going to put things up here. The first one was Cold Days by Jim Butcher. It's the 13th book in the Dresden Files series. I had read about half of this book ahead of time. I had just stopped reading it a while back. It's another one that I had started like 2 or 3 times. So I had managed to retain at that point at least the general part of the beginning. So I read about half this book this month, realistically. I really enjoyed Cold Days because it's where you start to see a real shift in Harry Dresden. I'm not going to give really synopses of this, partially because I read 4 Dresden Files books in 12 days, and all 4 of those kind of run together a little bit for me. And also because there's only so much at this point that you can say about these books that aren't spoiling. And I know it's like the 13th or 14th book in this series, so like, but also I don't want to spoil things for people who are still catching up, because the last book just came out a few weeks ago. Anyway, this is when you start seeing real changes in Harry, and he's taken on some really drastic responsibilities, and you start to see more of Fairy. You start to see more of the politics of Fairy. And you don't quite get a full insight into it, but you definitely start seeing the way that things work and the mentality that Mab has, and it's really interesting. Now, the next book that I read was Skin Game, which was the next book in the series, which was the 14th book in the series. Skin Game kind of takes that level that was established in Cold Days and like jumps it up. It is really good. This is one of the books that I kind of lose in the middle, I'll be perfectly honest. But again, you get to see some real development in Dresden and in his relationships, and especially his relationship to Molly. This is when his relationship to Molly starts really shifting, and you start seeing Molly as a real adult and as a real member of the medical community? A real member of the magical community. Not just as she was earlier as the Rag Lady, but as a self-possessed adult, and watching that shift from her being his apprentice to her being independent is a really interesting transformation that happens over about 3 books, but it really starts here. So I took a slight break from Dresden Files, and by that I mean I think I was reading this at the same time, and I read Cemetery Boys. Now this is the Booksplosion book of the month. They're doing a live stream this weekend on November 7th talking about it, which I'm going to try to attend. I will link that channel. I believe they have a separate channel, or at least their social media down below in the description, so you guys can check it out. Cemetery Boys. Cemetery Boys follows Yadriel, who is a trans boy in a traditional Bruhex Hispanic family. Now, one of the constraints of the Bruja and the Brujos is that if you are a girl, you go through one specific ceremony to be gifted your powers by Lady Death. If you're a boy, you go through a different ceremony. And men and women have completely different abilities. Women tend to be more healers, and a lot of them go into the medical field. The men work with spirits. They take spirits who are stuck on our plane and they help them move on and release them into the spirit world. Yadriel knows that he is a boy. But while his parents are working on accepting his identity, his father refuses to let him go through the ritual for boys. So Yadriel and his cousin go through the ritual for him on his own. And this book is really about identity within a community, especially within a conservative, traditional community. It is a beautiful book. This is one I'm giving a big old rainbow star. It is written by a Latinx trans author. Its main character is a trans boy who is gay. I love it. I love it so much. The representation in so many ways is so great, and I loved it. And there's some really touching moments with his family. It's so good. Please go read it. Okay, so my next two books are the most recently published two books of the Dresden Files series. They both came out this year. It's Peace Talks and Battlegrounds. I will say Peace Talks doesn't really stand on its own well, and that's a criticism I've seen of it a lot. I have also heard that they were originally written as one book, and then either the publisher or the editor wanted to split them up into two, and that's how they ended up being released. Peace Talks is the build-up to the big battle that is Battleground, and it very much reads that way. I still enjoyed it a lot because what we really saw was Dresden's relationships. We saw his relationship to his brother change. We saw the inner workings of the Wraiths and the Fae, and we get to see his relationship to Murphy really grow. And even to Butters and the Knights of the Sword. It is a book that takes a deep breath. And honestly, it kind of gives you a bit of a break from everything that's happening between Skin Game and Battleground. Like I said, I don't think that it really stands on its own. It needs Battleground to be worth it, for lack of a better term. But it's still very enjoyable. Battleground is one night. I cried harder during this book than I have during, I think, anything else. To the point that I had to stop reading one night. I was reading in bed and I had to stop reading because I was crying too hard, and my husband had to comfort me. Now, he had read the book before me, and he knew what was coming up, and he specifically didn't warn me because when we're reading the series together, we try not to give each other spoilers, which is great. But there is some stuff in there that is really heavy. It deals with so much. You get to see how strong Mab really is. You see just how powerful some of these people have become over the last few books. You see Ebenezer in a way that he has never been shown before. You see the power that Molly has built. It is an exhausting, emotionally heart-wrenching, excellent read. I never want to read 4 Dresden Files books in a row within less than 2 weeks ever again. Okay, we're gonna move on from that. Where's my list? Okay, let's see. The next book that I read was Come Tumbling Down, which is the 5th book in the Wayward Children series by Shauna McGuire. I really love Shauna McGuire's writing. This is the 2nd series of hers that I've been reading. The other one is the October Day series, which is also really excellent. Come Tumbling Down deals with 2 characters from this series. Well, arguably it deals with 4 characters from the series, but the main focus is 2 characters, Jack and Jill. I am not going to spoil the previous book, which was also about Jack and Jill, but it has a very Frankenstein vibe to it. There are multiple characters who have come back from the dead. I loved the representation in this book. You have one character who was resurrected and has to consistently get essentially recharged with electric power in order to kind of keep her systems running. And the first thing that runs out when she is running low on power is her voice. So she signs. And there's another character who suddenly picks up that she's signed. She goes, oh, great. And they start speaking in sign language. And that's just what it is, which is fantastic. There is also a main romance line that is a female romance. It's so good. And Jack deserves a hug and all of the good things in the world. In this series, there is also a main character who is a trans boy, and Cade is my favorite. Oh, I love Cade. He's got this great southern accent, and he's the absolute best. I believe the book that focuses on him is coming out in 2021. She kind of specifically put off writing his book because each of the books that focuses on individual characters kind of discusses their backstory, and dealing with a trans character means dealing with dead names, and she wanted to do it respectfully. Now, earlier in the series, we also have a main character who's asexual, we have characters who are gay, who are trans, and overall the representation in this series is really excellent. A reread for me. This is another one that I actually read this entire book. I did not remember a damn thing about it. And that is Carve the Mark by Veronica Roth. I love this book so much. For those who don't know, I have lived with chronic pain for close to 10 years, and this book has the best representation of chronic pain I have ever read. It is, okay, so we follow Akos and Sira mainly in this book. And Sira has a current gift. Current is the energy that runs throughout their galaxy. And everyone has a gift that they experience and that they show, which manifests in different ways. It is not exactly a magic system, but it's similar. Akos's current gift, I actually am not going to say because that's kind of a reveal, but like some people get it as premonitions. They're the oracles for their planet. Or Sira's is that she can produce pain in another person, but she also experiences pain constantly. And there's a lot of nuances to her gift that are just done so well. Akos is kidnapped by a neighboring nation state called the Shotet, and he and his brother are taken and imprisoned by the family that runs it. And I'm not going to, it's really hard to summarize this story without giving the spoilers, but essentially Sira and Akos have this kind of symbiotic relationship. His brother is being held for his current gift, and Sira's ruling brother is frankly a piece of shit. He is a tyrant. He is not exactly a sociopath, but he has basically been abused into being this violent, terrible person. It's really good. It is so good. They end up on several quests at once, actually, and one involves overthrowing a government. Another one involves trying to save family and building a real relationship with each other between Sira and Akos. That was a terrible summation of this book. I'm really sorry. I'm not always the best at it. I'm working on it. But it was really, really great to read. And the depiction of chronic pain and chronic illness is the best I've seen in fiction. And the main reason for this is because often when I see chronic illness in books, the discussion around it is trying to fix the chronically ill person, and that's not what they do with Sira. And somebody makes the comment at one point that she doesn't want to have her pain taken away. What she wants was autonomy. She wants the ability to take care of herself. And that's not something I see very often, but it is very true of people who are in chronic pain, who have to rely on doctors or friends or family to take care of themselves. They can deal with the pain a lot of the time, and that is something that they want to not have taken away necessarily, but to be made better. But the autonomy that they miss and that they want can be really crippling to not have, and I speak from experience of that. Okay, I think that's everything. I'm gonna check my reading list again. Yep, okay, that was all 11 books that I read this month. Okay, that's everything I've got. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.